Welcome and thanks for joining us. I'm Susan Copen for the Pittsburgh Business Times. Pittsburgh is buzzing these days with innovation and new technologies being developed in the fast-growing autonomy industry, which includes things like autonomous vehicles, robotics, and artificial intelligence. And a new study found that Pittsburgh is at the national forefront of these industries, and we're excited to discuss that today with some of the experts in our region. Please welcome Don Smith, president of RIDC and a nationally recognized expert in regional economic development. Matt Johnson-Roberson is the director of Carnegie Mellon University's Robotics Institute and a professor in the School of Computer Science. Danielle Proctor is the CEO of Advanced Construction Robotics and has 25 years of experience in technology, construction, and product development. And ACR is a leading provider of robotics for the construction industry. Thanks for being with us today. Good to talk to everybody. We have a lot of things to get to, but first, I want to talk about the autonomy industry, the sector, and what that actually means. Most people think autonomous vehicles, but it's much more than that. What is the scope and the size?
Yeah, it's a great point, Susan. I mean, everybody sees the autonomous vehicles that are driving around our streets, and they know that Uber and Aurora and Argo are all testing here, Motional. But it's much greater than that, and the robotics industry in our region goes back 40 years and includes all kinds of things from defense robotics to construction robotics, like Danielle's company. There are robotic companies that paint buildings and walls, and then there's artificial intelligence, of course, that is exploding in our region as well. So it really is a broad industry. It's not just about self-driving cars.
And Matt, for you, your thoughts on the industry?
Yeah, you know, it's been an incredible time for robotics, and we're really at this sort of inflection point where many of the technologies that have been developed over the last 40 years are starting to come to market, really because the technology's gotten good enough to be effective. And so I'm personally very excited just because it means that lots of things that previously didn't have robots involved with them, you know, outside of manufacturing and a few other areas where there were a lot of robots, are getting the kind of benefit of these new technologies and hopefully sort of in the long term economic transformation because of that.
And Danielle, same thing. When you hear autonomy and people say, oh yeah, that's self-driving cars, you say, oh no, wait, there's more.
Ours is a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
We currently have a robot out there. Everybody kind of usually thinks about robotics being smaller or inside. We currently have a robot out there that will go up to 117 foot wide and ties rebar on bridges. So the exciting thing about autonomy to us is it's pretty much anywhere that we identify that there's a task that is repetitive or dangerous or just monotonous, or you just can't find the people for. That's a perfect fit for autonomy. And when you can program something to see, think, and act on those tasks, it's a wide open range of autonomous solutions that are going to come out.
And right now we are here at Mill 19 in Hazelwood Green, which has become a symbol of Pittsburgh's new economy. Talk to us a little bit about all of the exciting things that are coming to this historic site.
Sure, Susan. This is, RIDC undertook Mill 19 as a project probably started about 7 years ago and really developed this concept that we would keep the structure of the old steel mill, but build these high-tech, high-performance buildings underneath it. And so we're here at Mill 19A. We were very fortunate to attract Carnegie Mellon as an anchor tenant for that first building. And so they're here building and testing robots, autonomous systems, and artificial intelligence. There's been some announcements about some new buildings. CMU is going to build some additional buildings down here. The University of Pittsburgh is coming down here on the innovation side on life sciences. And it's interesting to note that this site was actually the site where things like the self-driving cars first were tested. So the red team racing that won the DARPA Urban Grand Challenge was created and tested right here on this site. So it's a historic site for jobs in the region, and we really hope it's going to be the future site of new jobs in the region.
And how are these new technologies creating jobs for average people? So you don't have a PhD, you're not an engineer. How are you getting in on autonomy?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting opportunity we have now as kind of robots move from research technologies to ones that go into businesses and marketplace. It means that you create entire business systems around that, and that means it's not just the people that build those robots, but it's really the services that enables. And so if you can offer new services, there's everything from people that sell those services, support those services, repair the robots, service the robots, get them between locations. But ultimately, it's about companies that are trying to offer something that's new, and robots are really just one part of that. And I think they get most of the focus because they're the exciting sort of bit of that. But if you think about any business, there's many, many people across a bunch of different sectors that help make that work.
And Danielle, I know we were talking, you said you have a lot of people that you're going to be hiring.
Yeah, actually, we are in that growth stage. So ACR is fortunate enough that we are already out in the market, and we need the team to support that. So while we are engineering centric, we currently have a 3-to-1 ratio of non-engineering to engineering employees, and we're looking to grow that. I think also an interesting point is not only making these robots and servicing and supporting them, as Matt brought up, but we're also kind of creating a new job title out in the field, because we have to then train the people how to operate and dance and work with the robots. So we're excited. We've actually created a whole new category called the robot supervisor. We're creating a training facility for them. There's going to be online learning. We're working with the unions as well as other trade folks. And everybody's getting on board is, now that the robot's out here, how do I use it? And how do I be better at that? And that's going to open up just a whole new venue for people to get educated.
And Susan, I think one of the important points out of what Matt and Danielle have said is, a lot of people think of robots as job-destroying technologies, but they're really not. They're job-creating technologies, and the companies that are employing robots are actually hiring more people than those that don't. So this is really about growing jobs in southwestern Pennsylvania with these new technologies.
A lot is happening in Pittsburgh with research and development, especially spin-offs from our universities. But down the road, there's probably a lot of opportunity for companies that build stuff. So the companies that are going to be building the component parts, are we doing enough to attract those companies?
Well, I mean, you can never do enough. There's always more to be done. But I think there is a real realization now that we need to focus on the manufacturing side of this. This is where the real high numbers of jobs are going to be created. We're very fortunate to have CMU, the #1 university in the world in robotics and autonomy, right here in our backyard. And they've been the wellspring of all these innovations. But we need to help those companies grow to the point where, like Danielle's company, they're actually manufacturing product and employing large numbers of people. And we need to look for those manufacturers that want to come here and access that technology here in our region.
And the autonomy sector presents a key economic development opportunity. What should the public sector be doing to encourage its growth, and what have officials done? What actions have they taken to help in that?
Well, there's actually a great deal of activity going on right now. We partnered with the Pittsburgh Chamber and the Mellon Foundation to do the Forefront study, which looked at the industry in our region. We had tracking over 80 companies, over 7,000 jobs today here in our region in these industries, and looking at strategies for how we grow that, whether it's supporting more commercialization at startups, whether it's the expansion of growth stage companies like advanced construction robotics, and then really deploying these technologies more broadly in manufacturing. Right now the region's competing for a $100 million Economic Development Administration grant through the Build Back Better program, focused around these technologies and using them in manufacturing and helping create more companies. So there's a lot of activity going on and a lot more we can do to really nurture this unique advantage that our region has.
And of course we know President Biden did stop by to take a look at what was going on here.
Right here in Mill 19, and the Secretary of Commerce has been here twice, the European Union Trade Mission has been here. So there's a lot of interest and focus about the buzz that's going on in Pittsburgh that is really the end of the pipeline for these 40 years of investment.
And the role of foundations in this region is unusual compared to other parts of the country. Can you describe how they've been supporting the growth of this sector?
Yeah, as was already highlighted, Mellon has been incredibly generous in trying to figure out how to spur economic development in the region, but really invest in Pittsburgh and invest particularly in this area right here where Mill 19 is. And so at Carnegie Mellon, we're going to be building a new building down here called the Robotics Innovation Center, and that's going to be sponsored by a grant from RK Mellon. And what that's hoping to do is to expand what's already happening down here and to bring more robotic researchers and to kind of do more of this investment in a lot of this translational research and this fundamental research that hopefully makes its way into companies eventually and then changes people's lives.
You know, one of the things that we kind of, listening to you guys talk, is we're essentially experiencing almost a robotic renaissance, right? So in order to promote these people who are so creative and just have so much potential, foundations, philanthropists, they need to help. And that's been occurring even back in Venice when, you know, the preliminary artists were trying to get off the thing. Somebody needs to help, and there's a lot of ways to do that, whether it's building these grants and these centers and these facilities as incubation centers, right? Actual investment in these companies to help them get across that finish line. And then even better yet, the companies around here start using us. The best way, you know, open up your doors, be an innovation partner, and help them test where they need to go.
I think it's a really key point. One of the things that I think is one of the most important things to think about with robotics is that it's about people, which is sort of one of the most ironic parts of it. But we need to invest in people to build robots, people to develop these systems, to understand the businesses that can be built around that. And so all of this investment around robotics is really an investment in the people of this region and growing that talent so that they can kind of lead the next generation.
And Matt, we're going to focus on you right now, put you in the hot seat. What do you have in the works this year for the Robotics Institute?
Well, sort of kind of building off that idea of investment in people, we're really thinking about our educational programs and expanding those. So one of the things that I think is important is for us to figure out a way of translating lots of the stuff that's happening at the kind of cutting edge in the research domain to a much broader audience. So we're thinking a lot about outreach. So that's everything from K-12. So how do we get into schools and get people inspired about STEM and robotics? How do we think about reaching into the community and use this site as a way of saying, hey, look, there's things you can learn about robotics, there's things you can learn about science and math that will then help your kids and their kids, you know, do things that are really exciting and interesting with their lives. And so one of my central goals for the Robotics Institute is to figure out how do we be more community facing and how do we continue to have the sort of world-class robotics that we do, but how do we make that more relevant to everyday people?
And Danielle, for you at ACR, anything new and exciting coming up that you want to share?
Oh yes, we're coming out and we're going to be happy to announce IronBot is our second robot that's going to be coming out later this year. So we currently have TieBot that came out a couple years ago and it's already been out on the jobs working, tying over 8.5 million pounds of rebar. That's a rebar tying robot. And IronBot is now going to be available later this fall, where this heavy lifter is going to be able to carry 5,000-pound bundles of rebar and carry, lift, and place the rebar. So this is going to be a game changer for anybody in the concrete reinforced market. That's the short-term goal, and then on to the next. We want to identify real-world problems in the construction industry that are backbreaking, repetitive, or dangerous, and design robots to assist our crews to be more productive and at the end of the day come home safe.
You know, and Susan, I think that this panel is a great example of the multitude of things that we have going on in our region that makes us so competitive. We have so much going on at the universities, and we have so many tenants who are autonomous vehicles, robotics, and AI tenants, almost all of whom have their roots traced to Carnegie Mellon and the initial investments in the Robotics Institute and the National Robotics Engineering Consortium. We've been providing space for that as our role as an economic development organization, and now we're seeing, you know, the end users coming up with the great uses and applications for this technology. We're one of the few places in the world where all of this works together, and that really gives us a competitive advantage.
Any final thoughts from the panel?
Sure, I'll just add on to that really what you're seeing here, particularly in Western Pennsylvania, is sort of the fruition of all of these ideas, right? It's that you want to have fundamental research done and invested in, and then you want to figure out how to translate that into technologies that can be used in the marketplace, and then you want to have businesses take that up and bring it to people and make their lives better. So I know as a roboticist, that is sort of the dream that most of us get excited about, why we want to go to work, and so I'm just happy to be part of it and happy to be here.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, it's we're at the cusp. This is 40 years in the making. It's been brewing. It's going to accelerate quickly, And we are so excited to be part of this revolution and actually get these things out in the market.
Don, Matt, Danielle, thank you so much for your insights. Very interesting conversation.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks.
Thanks, Susan.
And I'm Susan Copen for the Pittsburgh Business Times. Thanks for watching.